Hey everyone, I'm Dan from JazzComposersPresent.com, an online space where composers, musicians, and listeners come together to celebrate the music we love. I'm joined today by Danny Jonokuchi, trumpeter, composer, arranger, and vocalist based in New York City, who leads his own ensembles and has arranged for many acclaimed artists. Danny is here to show us how to find new colors using fourths.
Hi everyone, thanks so much for tuning in, and thanks Dan and Steve for having me today. So I want to talk about different ways that you can use chordal voicings or stacking fourths to create new sounds and textures in your writing. So instead of building chords in thirds, chordal harmony really is focused on stacking fourths and sometimes just one major third to create a sound that is more open, modern, and almost floating and ambiguous. And one of my favorite early examples of chordal voicings is from the brass opening of Duke Ellington's Diminuendo in Blue from 1937. This is a great example of how you can use fourths to use a bold and striking sound. We're going to put the link of that so you can check it out below. Now, a quick note about how to get purely chordal harmony. Now, this would be just using fourths and the third as I mentioned, but you really want to avoid using tritones at the top of the voicing. That would create some dissonance, and even using fifths at the bottom in the middle can sometimes create something that's more harmonically concrete, and you want to create that ambiguous sound. But just like with any rule, these rules can be broken with the right approach, and I want to share with you some of that in these first examples. So my first example is of how to use a high chordal voicing. I'm pulling from my orchestral suite Brass Ventures, specifically the opening of the second movement. So I'll show you what's happening. First, I wrote a high string theme, and then I heard what it would sound like just using perfect parallel fourths to start. Once you do that, you can start to play around with different tension and motion by moving the bottom voices usually down a half step or up a half step to create some additional motion. Now, once you do this, you'll see that this can really have a big shimmering and full sound, but also create interesting motion that'll take you in some new harmonic directions. So you can see there's so many different ways that you can use it. One way to notice is that when the melody holds on a half note of an E, that the lower voices, this is in that second bar, they're moving down to create that sense of falling motion. So it does, like I said, it doesn't have to be straight fourths all the way. That can be just the starting point. Or even you can create different points where you line up where you know you want to have a chordal voicing, but then other things can take shape. So it's really important when you're writing these that you're not really thinking about each chord. You're not thinking about A7, sharp 9, and things like that. You're really looking at analyzing the voice leading between all the different parts. It's this type of motion that creates the interesting factors of a chordal voicing. Now, that was a great example of chordal voicings when you're using them up high. The next trick I want to show you is what to do when your melody is low. So let's take a look at this C6-9 chord where a G is in the melody. You'll notice that if you stack 5 fourths going all the way down from there, you're going to get a low B in the bass or the lowest voice. Now, this can be breaking some low interval limits, and frankly, it can just get a little bit muddy depending on your instrumentation. So a little trick I learned from the trumpeter and composer Mike Mossman is how you can essentially fold up this lowest fourth so you can achieve that sound. So by moving it up an octave, you're still getting that chordal sound, but then you can use things in this register. So I want to share how I use this technique on one of my arrangements of Tad Dameron's Lady Bird from my big band album, A Decade. Let's listen. So here you can see that even though the melody is low, and even though the top voice, the melody note doesn't move, you can create so many different types of motion and different harmonic things that are happening underneath. Now, this is called oblique motion, by the way, when you have the top voice stay the same and all of the voices under are moving. So what you do is just take that voice and start experimenting with all of these different ways that fourths underneath can create that interest. I hope you'll have fun with fourths. They're incredibly versatile and full of possibilities. Thanks so much for listening.
Thanks for watching today's mini lesson. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Drop any questions, comments, or suggestions for future videos down below. To watch our full-length events and participate in live Q&As with our presenting artists, head to jazzcomposerspresent.com. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.